Okay, so you'll notice that we are starting with section 5. Sections 1 through 4 I don't think need the attention of me going through them with you in class. That's what tomorrow's short quiz is going to be over, sections 1 through 4, so it's some function notation. I think there was like some midpoint and distance thrown in there. So your summer packet, look through the sections 1 through 4, and you're going to have like 6 questions over that tomorrow, okay? So, first thing, domain and range. I'd like you to have about a 60-second conversation at your pod. What does domain and range mean? If you don't exactly know how to describe it or define it, maybe describe a picture or just anything you know about domain and range. Talk about it, okay?
Yeah, domain's like left to right. And they're usually
All right, so domain. Carly, what did you two gals talk about? X. X, and you called it good? Okay. Okay, so then what did you say for Y? What did you say for range? Sometimes I get so excited I give the answer in my question. Did anybody else have a different conversation or have different vocabulary besides the X's and the Y's? I heard a lot of that, but was there any other vocabulary words that came out? X's and Y's are correct. Okay, so don't think that you were wrong. Okay, they're correct. But was there any other vocabulary that came out? Like this word? Okay. Sometimes we describe the domain as the input, which that's what we're doing with the X, right? We're inputting X into the Y. Okay, so if we describe X as input, what would we describe Y as? Output. Okay. Okay. But if you remember that the domain are the X's and the range are the Y's, you're going to be good to go. What I'm going to ask of you is that you identify what the domain and range is of a function. So we are going to start with just graphs, and eventually I'm going to be able to give you an equation, and without the graph, you're going to be able to give me the domain and or range. Okay. So take a moment and sketch this graph in your notebook so that when we write the answer, you have something to refer to. Okay, it doesn't have to be beautiful, just enough to get the idea of what is happening. And then we are going to talk about the domain and range. And before we write it down, I want you to turn to your neighbor. Okay, so most of you have 4 people in a pod. Turn to just a partner. And just describe, one person describes where the range begins and ends. One person describes where the domain begins and ends. Thinking kind of about the things we talked about with interval notation. You don't have to write it down. But does one person describe the range, one person describe the domain? Go and do that right now. Okay, Veronica, the domain, where does it start and stop?
It starts at -1 and ends
Okay, our domain starts at x is -1 and it stops at x is 5. We're looking across the board at what the x's are. Okay, so now, do we include -1 in our interval? You shook your head right away. Why?
Because on the one, the dot is floating.
Okay, we have a closed dot there, right? Do we include the 5? We do not include the 5, so we have to put a parenthesis there. There is an open circle at x equals 5, so we would not include it. Okay. Our range. Mia, where does our range start and stop?
3
Okay, 3 and -3. So we have all the way down here, y is -3, and then all the way up here, y is +3. Okay, so I'm going to go in order from left to right, so negative to positive, -3 to 3. If you write it the other way, I'm not going to count you off. All right, do we include -3 in our interval? Yes. Do we include 3 in our interval? Yes. Okay, so we need brackets around both of those. Now, I know that there's an open circle right here. That's for y equals 2. But look, we have a y equals 2 over here, so technically y equals 2 is included in our interval, even though there's an open circle there, because there's more than one spot with a y value there. Thank you. All right. I would like you to, this could be a very, very quick picture for you to draw, and then give me the interval notation for domain and range. When you're done, check your answer with a neighbor. Write down the interval notation for domain and range, and then check your intervals with the people in your pod to see if you agree. Okay, our domain. Kelly, what do you have for your domain?
The brackets with the negative, it's infinity, and then a negative 1 for the first one.
Okay.
Yes, we had 2.
Okay.
And then a bracket with a 1 and a positive infinity.
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we have from negative 1 to the left, and we have from positive 1 to the right. So negative infinity to negative 1 is describing this piece here, and then 1 to infinity is describing this piece here. Make sure you put those parentheses around your infinities because it's not a number, we can't include it. But we do want to include the negative 1 and 1. Okay? And then our range. Where do we have y values? Madeline, what do you write now? 0 to infinity. So we have y values beginning at 0 and then they go up. So from 0 to infinity, we have y values as our range. Good. I'm not sure how much we'll get into an actual example, but I am going to ask you to find zeros. You've been finding zeros for years in your math classes, okay? So let's just take like a 30-second time out and at your pod discuss what does it mean to find zeros? What do you do and what are you finding? Okay, if I give you an example, find zeros of an equation, how are you doing it and what are you finding?
So it's like
What does it mean and how do you do it?
what are you where you like you factoring these recipes and you take that
All right, so kind of ask you a two-part question. Okay, so Brecken, what's one thing that you talked about at your pod? Okay, we're finding intercepts. Specifically, which ones? Okay, good. We're finding our x-intercepts. So where is our graph crossing the x-axis? Okay. We are finding where that occurs. Okay. How are we finding that? Eli, what did you guys talk about with that?
set the equation equal to 0.
Beautiful. You're going to get an equation, probably some sort of function. And when we set it equal to 0 and solve for x, we're finding our x-intercepts, or our zeros. Okay? Now, there's a lot of different ways we can go about doing that. And really, we're going to take the next couple chapters to talk about different ways. Chapter 2 is all about polynomials, and we'll talk about the different strategies. If we have something that's a cubic function, a quartic function, all sorts of different things. But don't forget that you spent a good 2 months in Algebra 2 talking about quadratics. Remember those? Okay. So if I asked you to find the zeros of this guy, what were some strategies that you used last year? Factoring, remember this stuff, right? Okay. What else was an option? Quadratic formula. What else? Quadratic formula. Now, if I wasn't giving you a calculator, which I am not giving you a calculator during the chapter 1 test, I'm going to teach you how to use your calculator, but we're not going to get it for the test. Would this be one that the quadratic formula would be agreeable on? Without a calculator? 22 squared? Without a calculator? Okay. There is another strategy you probably learned. Probably a couple. Completing a square. Okay, we're going to talk about that one in chapter 2.
Isn't there a long division? Or is that
There is long division, but you would want something larger than a quadratic. Okay? And that's something else we'll get into chapter 2. Graphing would be another way to find zeros, but here again, that's not going to be super helpful on this one. Okay. So if we were going to solve this one, okay, factoring is probably going to be our best option if we didn't have a calculator. Okay. So just real quick, if I want a 3x squared, we would want x times 3x. Right? If we want a 16, a negative 16, there's lots of different ways we can get a negative 16, right? But that has to multiply out to get that 22x right there. Right? Right? Anybody have an idea what number to use? A positive and negative number. What? 8 and 2? Like if we put 8 here and negative 2 here, you get 24x and negative 2x. Do those add to 22x? Okay. So then, when we have a product that equals 0, then each factor can be set equal to 0. So we have a 0 at 8, and we have a 0 at 2/3. Negative 8 and 2/3. You're going to be rusty at factoring, it's fine. We'll have lots of time to brush up our skills. Okay. Last thing before, my goal is to give you about 10 minutes to work on your homework, and I'm going to pass out online books. Okay. If I give you a graph and I ask you to identify where that graph is increasing or decreasing, what are you going to look for to tell the difference between increasing and decreasing? Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and to describe to them what you need to look for increasing versus decreasing. Just describe it real quick, and then we'll talk about it all together.
I feel like, yeah, if you're going, you go left to right, you go right.
I think it's increasing between the sun and the
All right, everyone back up here together. Kaden, you had a really nice way of describing it. Could you share it with everyone?
Sure. So this, if you're going left to right on the graph, you kind of want to see where or how the y changes. So like up to that first green point, from going from the left to the right, it's going to be increasing. Then that middle section is going to be decreasing. The next section is going to be increasing, and the last section is just going to stay the same.
Okay, so I liked what he said from left to right. All right, we read from left to right. We're looking at the domain from left to right. What are our y values doing, was his wording. So are our y values getting bigger, or are they getting smaller? Okay. So we are actually going to describe the increasing and decreasing intervals of this graph right here. So if you want to take 1 minute and sketch it down for me. And we're going to put arrows on here. Okay? From left to right, are our y values getting bigger, or are they getting smaller? Okay. So we are going to identify the pieces of the domain that are increasing and the pieces of the domain that are decreasing. Okay, so from left to right, what is the first thing happening with our y values? Are they increasing or are they decreasing? Okay, from left to right, these are getting smaller, right? Where does the switch occur? Okay, so we really only care about the x values, so that -3 is the number we care about. So we are decreasing from negative infinity until -3. Then we begin to increase, right? Then we get bigger. We increase until this guy right here, right? Okay. But we really only care about the x value. At which x value does it switch? 0. So we are increasing on the interval -3 to 0. These are intervals. They are not coordinates. They are intervals. Okay. Then we switch again, and from left to right we're falling, and we fall all the way until here, right? X equals 3. So I'm decreasing from 0 until 3. And then we change, switch again, right? And we'll talk about minimums and maximums Monday. Okay. We switch again, so now we're rising forever. So we're increasing from 3 until forever. So 3 until infinity. All right, so we have 10 minutes left in class. I would like you to get your gold sheet out, and I want you to take these 10 minutes to begin your book work, okay? If you don't have your book with you, then I have 7 extra textbooks on my shelf. You can have 1 per pod. Just make sure you put them back on my shelf. If you requested an online book, I'm going to give you the instructions and your code so that tonight you can go home and sign up for that, okay?